You know, every so often, it's my duty to punish myself by reviewing an album from the past, maybe one that, whenever it came out, was actually pretty good, but now just sucks. Well, I have a perfect candidate for that today, and that's what I'm going to do. It's been roughly 12 years since this album was released, so in 1999, well, that would pinpoint your date. Now think about it. I was born in 1984, so I was roughly 14 turning 15 at the time. So you'll have to forgive my musical idiocy at this particular juncture in my life. And you'll also have to remember what was going on in the music business at that particular time. There was an explosion of multiple genres that was going to kill the really, really awesome musical exploration and expansion that took place in the 1990s. One such was, of course, the boy and girl group craze that included acts such as NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls, and would eventually lead to other bands, or groups, or whatever you want to call it, such as, you know, Beyonce and the rest of the girls from Destiny's Child. This was all predicated and preset by Hanson and TLC. But I'm not going there, so don't worry. The other big musical and cultural boom that was going on at this time is where I am going. And that's rap metal or nu metal. It's a more aggressive style of alternative music that almost borders on the metal genre that also includes rapping. And this is something that you saw most prominently in the band that I'm reviewing today. And that's the band Limp Bizkit. But first, let me give you a little bit of history and actually be kind of real with you for a minute. Now, a couple of years prior to this release, Limp Bizkit had released their first record, which was entitled $3 Bill Y'all. And for the time, this record was considered to be semi-groundbreaking. However, it was not received very well whenever it was first released. In fact, it fared very poorly on the Billboard charts and didn't reach its peak position of number 22 until many subsequent tours and an Ozfest appearance had further solidified this band's fan base. However, it was a neat little idea. Not to mention they had the backing of Jonathan Davis from Korn, and Korn already had at this point become a pretty established group, considering they'd already released 2 albums, they're self-titled, and Life is Peachy. Now, right after the release of $3 Bill Y'all, Limp Bizkit's frontman Fred Durst was featured on the track All in a Family, off of the Korn album Follow the Leader. And this really gained him a lot of positive recognition. Now people were starting to clamor for the new Limp Bizkit album, especially after they heard the first single that came off of it and saw the subsequent music video. That music video was Nookie, and this was something that was released prior to the album and really received a lot of attention. In fact, I can remember it being number 1 on all of those obnoxious countdown shows, your TRLs, and there was even another show called The Box. It was a whole entire network at the time where you phoned in your music videos that you wanted to see, and this was constantly number 1. So yeah, Limp Bizkit was about to take over the world with their 1999 release, Significant Other. So yeah, being a 14 or 15-year-old kid hearing a guy scream and yell and peruse on and on about how he's pissed off at the world, well, you're a teenager, you're naive, you don't want to exactly become like your parents, so hey, it fits perfectly. This really describes me. I mean, I don't come from a broken home, I've not really been in a relationship yet, but I can relate to all this stuff. I'm pissed off, he's pissed off, it's a perfect parallel. So then the album drops in 1999, and the first time you spin it through, it's actually pretty cool. It's one of those albums that really just seemed to be perfect for the time, considering what was going on. Not to mention, it wasn't just the band themselves, it also featured some guests. So you knew some people that were going to be on this record, and that's something that furthered its brand recognition. For example, on one track, there was an appearance from both Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots fame, and also Jonathan Davis from Korn. Another one featured rapper Redman, who was, of course, a pretty large artist at the time, considering all the things that he did with the Wu-Tang Clan and then all of his solo works. There was a track that was supposed to feature Serj Tankian from System of a Down, but after Fred Durst had a falling out with one of the members of Taproot, that was quickly scrapped. Not to mention, like the song Faith, which was a cover that was on $3 Bill Y'all, they planned to do another cover on this album, which was entitled 1999. It was going to be a Prince release. And it made sense, considering the album was coming out in 1999. However, Prince wouldn't allow them to tarnish this, so maybe it's better off. They wrote an entirely different song and still entitled it 1999, only did it with a little bit more of a phonetic nature, using the letter N, and then teen, and then 90, the number, and then 9, the word. Interesting stuff. I gotta say, but still, it doesn't improve it. Now, whenever this album came out, it was very well received by the audience. This was an album that sold over 800,000 copies in its first week, and went on to become more than 7 times platinum in the United States alone, with worldwide sales exceeding more than 14 million copies. So yeah, Limp Bizkit wasn't just some American thing. This was something that was going on throughout the world. Their fan base had expanded to a worldwide global audience, and a lot of people really seemed to enjoy the work that they had put out. Now, this particular album had a multitude of singles. Nookie was just kind of the starting point. There was Break Stuff, which was the ultra-aggressive track. There was Rearranged, which was, well, you can't really call it a ballad. It's more of like a breakup song, but still, it's a little bit more low-key. There was No One Like You, which was a short-lived single, and then, of course, there was And Together Now, which was the song that they did with Redman, the rap battle, so to speak. And this is something that really showed Limp Bizkit's style that they had already started a little bit on $3 Bill Y'all, but hadn't fully explored yet. However, the goal of this video is to do one thing and one thing alone. It's been 12 years. Does this album have what we like to call lasting power? Is this something that's grown well? Is it something that's really aged well? That's what we're about to find out. Well, the answer is this. There's only one way to find out, and that's to listen to the album again 12 years after the fact. It's been a long time since I've admittingly listened to Limp Bizkit, so this is somewhat of a treat for myself, almost like revisiting my youth. Well, I gotta say this. There's definitely some diversity on this album, which is not something that you can really proclaim to the high heavens that Limp Bizkit has done throughout their career. The problem is that it really just seems a little bit awash and kind of droll. This is an album that does have a little bit of creativity, but it's just not enough. You have to remember that nu metal was kind of an idea where simplicity almost helped. You didn't need a plenitude of chords, not to mention you also didn't need to have a gratuitous amount of ideas in order to make an album that was going to be listened to by the fans. I kind of call this the dawn of musical stupidity, because people were taking this crap over the stuff that was happening in the earlier to mid-1990s that actually had some substance to it. I don't know what happened. I don't know if my generation just ended up being grown up born stupid or what, but it's something that happened. But at the time, it was great. You know why? Because it just seemed like an expansion of what the 1990s were doing. Yes, it was a little bit more free-flowing and a little bit simpler, but it was also a hell of a lot more aggressive. We were used to hearing songs that kind of fit that whole Breakfast Club image. Either that or something that you would expect to, I don't know, maybe set up a television series or something like that, like Breakfast at Tiffany's or Follow You Down, something like that. But this is something that was a little bit more aggressive, something that you wouldn't see on TV, something that your parents at the time would be a little bit scared if they knew that you were listening to it. So, with all those things said, yeah, this album really accomplished that. However, nowadays, whenever you consider the aging process, it just really doesn't fly. It's not so much that the music nowadays has really turned such a gratuitous and different corner where it's completely and totally irrelevant. This album definitely still has its relevant place in history. However, it's just not an album that really has aged well going into the 21st century, not to mention the year 2010, or in this case 2011. So let's talk some positives. What are some positive elements about this particular record? Well, for me, considering I was a fan of Stone Temple Pilots and Korn, and at the time was a fan of Limp Bizkit, seeing all three of these guys together, the frontmen, was, well, kind of a thrill. It was almost like a supergroup of vocalists of the particular time frame, and considering my particular avenue of music at that particular point was this alternative stuff, this was pretty cool. Also, another positive is the fact that all of the singles that were released on this particular album are still very listenable today. These are songs that you can pop on every once in a while and get that nice feeling of nostalgia that kind of makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. Yeah, I lived through that. Yeah, that's the song that kind of got me to buy the album. Well, there goes all the positives. There's really not that many. Now let's get to the negatives. Negatives, well, the list is going to run a little bit long, folks, so I hope you guys are prepared. I think the first negative that I see is that this album wears on you way too fast. And this is due also to the simplicity of the age. So this is something where there's not that many ideas that are coming forth. There's not exactly a lot of musical diversity. They're trying to do something new, and it worked for the time, but right now it really just doesn't stand the test of time. Yeah, sometimes time can be your biggest friend or your worst enemy. It's a weird parallel. Secondly, and probably not so importantly, the band's reputation has definitely hurt it a lot. Now this is something that definitely doesn't bruise the ego of this release all that much, and it really is nitpicky. But sometimes whenever you consider the personalities, that can sometimes sway your opinion a little bit. It's almost like a fan of Michael Jackson that won't listen to the music because, well, the dude could have been a pedophile. I can totally understand why that would outrage you, but it should be about the music, shouldn't it? I still don't know. I did a review on the new album and it was good, but that still doesn't silence of what he might have done whenever he was living. So, yeah, that one's a little bit nitpicky, but Fred Durst is a pussy and tries to act hard. There's a certain fakeness or faux pas value to it that just baffles the mind and kind of destroys the senses. Thirdly, and probably most importantly, is the length. This is one of those albums that I can honestly remember only songs from the first part of it. And that's a real problem. This is an album that spans over an hour, and I'll be honest with you, without looking at the particular, the book of it, I couldn't tell you any names of any of the songs after End Together Now, because for me, that's the end of the album. That's where the album really ends for me, because everything after that just sucks. These are songs that should have been omitted, either that or maybe 2 or 3 of them would. Just let the album end whenever it's supposed to. Don't try to do too much. And this is something that Limp Bizkit's very, very guilty of. On $3 Bill, y'all, they weren't exempt of this either. They actually recorded a 16-minute long jam session and put it on the record, figuring to fuck with it. On the record that preceded this one, should I say, Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, the outro makes absolutely no sense and runs on for fucking ever. I mean, what the hell is this garbage? Some dude just laughing in the background over and over again? Just random noises and stupidity? And what the fuck is a Chocolate Starfish or Hot Dog Flavored Water anyways? Well, we'll get to that eventually, but you get the point. For God's sakes, I expected this to have good songs on it from front to back. This is considered by some to be one of the best albums of the 1990s. Where the fuck is it? I see an album that's maybe halfway good, but not all the way. Listen, it's one of those things on this particular record where it almost falls more in line with a rap record than it does an alternative rock, or even closer, or farther away, should I say in this case, a metal record. With rap records, unfortunately, you get the clutter effect. What the clutter effect is this. You have 17 or 18 tracks that a rapper or a series of rappers have laid down. A couple of the songs end up being pretty good that you end up listening to over and over again, and the rest is just filler crap that they threw on because it was an idea that spawned in their head and they decided, hey, what the fuck? I'm going to write a beat to this and record it. The result is this. There's a couple songs that you really enjoy, that you bump in your car, that you play for your friends and you love, but the rest of it you wouldn't want them to know that you listened to at all. Not even once. Some of this stuff is absolute garbage, and Limp Bizkit's significant other unfortunately falls victim to this parallel. This is one of those things where, after End Together Now ends, just stop the fucking CD. Believe me, it will seem a whole hell of a lot better to you if you do this. If you don't, this whole album goes downhill. And I mean in a hurry. It's like a turd sandwich that the first part of the turd sandwich is actually a regular Wendy's hamburger, and then all of a sudden, bam, you bite right into a nice big juicy log of crap. It sucks, and I hate it. That said though, the first half of the album, I love it. It's incredible. It's incredible how schizophrenic this album sometimes can seem. With one song they're trying to do a rap metal thing, another one they're trying to sing, another one they don't know what the hell they're doing. But the first part of this album, at least they're doing it with a little bit of moxie and a little bit of productivity. The guest work on this album is actually very well conceived, and it actually builds the score. This is something that helps this album a whole heck of a lot. Scott Weiland's vocals on No One Like You are very haunting, and Jonathan Davis is a nice parallel to Fred Durst, like it or not. If they continue to write in this particular mindset throughout the entire release, the whole thing would have been pretty damn good. In fact, I would have believed what the writers said. Well, actually, maybe if they did that, maybe the writers wouldn't have said as many nice things. I don't know. I don't know how this fucking system works. Sometimes I read reviews for absolute shit albums and they're praising it to holy high hell. St. Anger is probably one of them, but I'm scared to even look at fucking releases that boasted any sort of positive vibe for that particular album. Now, okay, let's be fair. We're going to actually do this logically, and we're going to do this productively. For 1999, and for what was going on in the musical realm at this particular time, Significant Other is a perfect fit. In fact, you could almost call it the banner of this particular year, or this particular genre. This is one of those albums that really defines what it was all about. Trying to do something a little bit different, even if it meant simplifying the sound a little bit. And that's exactly what they did, and it actually works quite well. But, well, it just hasn't aged well at all. In fact, it's aged like milk. Right now, it resonates as sour and dated. There's a lot of stuff on this that is just unlistenable right now, and may never be listenable again. The singles, as I said, are still good. These are still songs that you can listen to. But I feel as though maybe this is somewhat a little bit more prime and prone to the nostalgia value that I have attached to this record. Not to mention this band, considering I was a part of this particular little genre whenever it first came out. I'm not too sure if the next generation is going to be looking at this album and seeing it as anything all that great. It's not going to be like Led Zeppelin or Leonard Skinner or AC/DC or the first couple Metallica records. It's not going to strike like a lot of metal records that seem to be ageless, that always seem to be good no matter what day of the week it is, what month of the year it is, or what year in the celestial calendar it is. Doesn't seem to matter with some of these bands, but with Limp Bizkit, I think it's just a one-trick pony. It's something that just was good for the time, but it has absolutely no value outside of it. Like, after one particular year, let's just throw one out there in particular, like 2003 or 2004, whenever the fuck Results May Vary came out and just fucking blew the shit stain off the fucking commode. Whenever that happened, Limp Bizkit just fell off the planet. Nobody gave a fuck, and I still don't. But the funny thing about it is that I think after that, no one really cares. No one buys Limp Bizkit albums anymore. And whenever Gold Cobra is finally released, if it ever the fuck is, I hope the hell not, well, that's going to be the real gauge. Will a lot of old school fans come out and buy it? Probably so. But they'll probably do exactly what they did with Results May Vary and the one that came after it. Its title's not even important. They're probably just going to listen to it once, and that's going to be that. Now, well, it's been 12 years. I reviewed an album that my youth may have been a little bit touched by. It's scary to think that I was that naive as a kid. At least I listened to a lot of other good stuff. I mean, let's face it. But, in the grand scheme of things, Significant Other, it's not all that bad. It just suffers a little bit from some minor shortcomings. If you want a really bad album, I mean a really, really bad album, well, just ask me what it is. And maybe next time, I'll degrade myself to listen to it. But I warn you, it's bad. Really bad. And I really don't want to. But I will. I will.